Awesome, enticing, and enraging are the words that come to mind when you play Shadow of War. Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Middle-earth Shadow of War, sequel to the pretty much universally loved Shadow of Mordor. High hopes and high bars were set for the sequel because of that, and for the most part, they were met, both in storytelling and gameplay elements. But as you will most likely have heard by now, the game is being heavily criticized for having loot boxes in a single player game. And if you watch this channel for some time, or any time for that matter, you will know my stance on that. Although I have some things to say about it and some things will change because of it. But for now, let's dive in. The biggest selling point of Shadow of War is the Nemesis system. It's a system wherein high-level captains, war chiefs and overlords are first presented as the quote-unquote bosses you have to beat. However, this is not where it stops, because a game with about 30 harder to kill enemies would be pretty lame if you've killed them all and there was nothing else to do. What Shadow of War does instead is generate new captains whenever a specific event triggers, like when you die or when you take over a fort. However, it gets even deeper. This is where the name comes from. For instance, when a random AI grunt kills you, you will now be promoted, ranked up, and will now become a new target for you to kill or take over. And when I say take over, I mean take over. You can mind control anyone or anything as long as you have the skills from the skill tree unlocked to do so. In the end, it is kind of required to do so actually, because you need to take over and defend all of your forts. And you can't do this alone. You mind control captains to fight alongside you, upgrade them, and lay waste to the forces of the Dark Lord. This can be by giant siege beasts, huge armies, and let's not forget, you. Why would you let anyone else have all the fun? The combat is the entire backbone of this game. Everything revolves around it, and I'm happy to say that it's satisfying as all hell. Every hit feels like it really connects, and the executions are just plain awesome. You also have the skill tree that allows for rigorous upgrading of your abilities, which then in turn made the combat feel way less repetitive than it actually is. But not only that, the upgrades actually change the way the combat works. For instance, you have an upgrade which will allow your wraith to counter someone while you are finishing someone else off, which will then allow you to actually kill the person you are working on, filling up your execution meter and fucking not just one person up, but everyone around you instead. Which, you know, is fucking awesome. Last thing before I move on to the negatives, the story. And I must say, it's not the next Last of Us, however, it most certainly does a good job of keeping you interested and not making things more complicated than they need to be. The story starts where the last one left off. You forge a new ring of power, which you will use to overthrow and kill the Dark Lord. However, things do not go as expected, and you have to survive, adapt and overcome Bear Grylls style to then raise your own army and strike back. While doing so, you have a band of one-off characters supporting you who all do a good enough job on their own, but do add some nice touches to the overall experience. And let's not forget Celebrimbor, who is infused with your character Talion, who will frankly, they do have some funny, touchy and quite unexpected heavy moments throughout the at least 20-hour long campaign. Okay, the negatives. Let's get the main topic out of the way first. What is all this controversy around loot boxes all about? Well, in the game you have a currency to upgrade your weaponry and army. This currency can also be bought with real life money and used to buy loot boxes, in which you can get the captains and gear you would normally have to get yourself by mind controlling and killing enemies. In other words, you spend your real life money so you don't have to spend your time playing the game. In my personal opinion, these are the stupidest loot boxes yet. Because who would pay 60 bucks for a full AAA game to then spend more money to not have to play the game? Because you buy the boxes, you don't have to play the game to get your captains and upgrades. This is just so fucking stupid. And this has legitimately had made me think and actually made me reconsider my scoring policies. So thanks to Warner Brothers, I will now make an adjustment to the way I score my games. and it goes like this. If a game has loot boxes in them of any kind, other than purely 100% cosmetic items, because those do not influence the gameplay, I will take 2 whole points off its final score. This is utter bullshit and needs to stop. And this is my way of telling you that. But now we have the other negatives. Because believe it or not, loot boxes are not the only thing the game shoots itself in the foot with. I am now at a point in the game where the story is in a continuous loop of defending my forts. The game, which I am now about 20 hours into, says it is part of the main story, however there seems to be no end in sight. I have defended my forts 4 times and already have gone the missions to defend it the 5th and the 6th time. I don't know if this is the end of the campaign or if it's just a really bad developed stage in the story, because everything up until this point was simply great, but now I have to grind for hours to keep my forts at a high enough level to even be able to have a chance to figure out what the ending is going to be like. And I figure now that this is not going to be the end that the game deserves. Lastly, and this is really a joke in and of itself, the stealth. First off, the AI you work with can never get spotted by enemies, so they just walk in front of them and pretend nothing is happening, which can lead to some funny moments, but also some quite aggravating ones. But secondly, your stealth as well, because you can stand within 10 meters of someone, directly in their line of sight, and they still won't see you, which is nothing but ridiculous, and it makes the entire stealth mechanic really useless, in my opinion. Look, Shadow of War is not a bad game. It could probably have won Game of the Year if there was a little bit more critical thinking and a lot less loot boxes. Now, it just seems like a good game with a lot of bad PR. The combat is fast, fluid and satisfying, the story is pretty good up until the end, the stealth could have used some more work, but it is not a carbon copy of its predecessor when it could have been. However, I am also not going to stand by and let corporate greed consume good AAA games. So I'm going to tell you that if you don't mind the entire bullshit around microtransactions, go buy it. You will not regret it. But if you think this is the final straw and you want to hurt them where they'll feel it, I am going to tell you that Middle-earth Shadow of War is not worth the money.